Okay, it's currently Sunday. Dad's headed to Vegas right now, so he won't be here today. But first thing I gotta do is I gotta pull the lower shock mounting bolt, swing that out of the way, and pull that primary clutch off and see why it's hitting the inner clutch cover. That's the noise you guys were hearing in the last video when we started it, was there's something just perfectly not aligned, and then it's making it hit. Pop also added tabs right here so the seat mounting brackets don't bend. And then we're working on padding for the fuel tank to sit on and not get rubbed through, and then figure out another way to hold that down. You can see some of the padding that my brother's cut out already. I think he has to cut out a little bit more. And then Pop also made this for our pit box, which widens and makes sure it doesn't, it should be able to roll over the dirt with no problem. Because it used to be this wide, and then it had those wheels on it, and it would just try to fall over because those would go flat, and then it was a whole thing. So we have hard wheels on there, all on swivels, and then a widened and wider and longer stance to it, so hopefully it won't fall over anymore. Basically what we came to the conclusion of is that is not the right inner clutch cover for this RZR. So we got to order a new one of those and possibly new clutches all the way around, which is going to suck. But now that I have that kind of figured out, I'm going to focus my attention on Harpo's car, and I'm going to get that, at least the knuckle on the rear end, and then maybe just start cleaning it up to check for everything else. And then once we get those studs in, this thing can go back together. Pro R is still waiting on some other things with the clutch situation. So once those clutches come in, those studs come in, and all the other parts we had to order for this, and then the hubs for Pop's 4-seat RZR, which is outside, we'll pretty much be done with ordering parts, hopefully, and we can just start throwing these cars together. Okay, so I did a little bit of rearranging in the shop so I could get my box over here. I got that knuckle on, radius rods are connected, so we're just waiting on the studs to get that corner done. Okay, it's currently Tuesday. The person who never shows up to shop night is gonna work on the one car and try to get this transmission in. He's over there getting the fuel cell out, and I'm just gonna walk around and act like I'm doing stuff. All right, Dad, explain in a little bit more detail what we're doing here.
Okay, well, we did get a little distracted last week because I believe the last video I said I was putting this in, and as you can see, we didn't get there. So we got to get the old fluid out, drain that dry sump setup, old oil out, transmission in. We got to fill up that new torque converter with some fluid, get it stabbed in here, and then hook up all our lines and linkage, and then we'll be ready to stab the engine.
All right, we have the transmission in the one car, and some of the bolts just put through with nuts on the backside so they don't fall out. Then Pop got out here, and we're kind of focusing our attention more towards the Blue RZR again with why that clutch was hitting the cover. While we're figuring that out, Pop's figuring out his cables for the front and where to mount his fuse block so that we can get all the electrical figured out. All right, so we got the inner clutch cover figured out. It ended up being this wire was shoved all the way down in there, so got that without hitting it. And Pop's up here running more wire. All right, so Dad's over here. Well, it's currently Thursday, but Dad's over here getting this transmission in more, getting everything hooked up. Maybe have that motor through in, and then get some electrical figured out on Saturday, and hopefully run this thing. Pop's getting more of his wires figured out. He has a list of everything that he needs to do. This is not his handwriting, it's that one's. And it's all right, but Pop's gonna run the wires for everything, and then writing on parts mainly because you need O2 sensors, a hub, a lot of stuff, ignition switch. So once those parts get here, should be ready to go. Well, by ready to go, I mean ready to be put together and maybe driven. And then while that's happening, Elvis is up here trying to help us figure out our Miller TIG machine because it's not really getting set up right. All right, well, this weekend, or this week, there's not a lot of video. I know that without even having to look at that on my footage. But where we're leaving off is Pop's getting basically another wire harness ran, trying to figure out how to get the rear brake lights to the chase light, and all the other lights ran through the center. We're waiting on a bunch of parts, including front shock misalignment spacers, new hub for the driver front, O2 sensor, and just little stuff, ignition switch, little stuff like that that you don't realize until you have to, until you're really starting to go back together with it. So we're waiting on all that. We're gonna take the gas tank to an RV place and see if we can't get a bigger breather for it, just because we want to dump fuel somewhat fast. So that little line coming out of the gas tank ain't really gonna let it vent too well. But once all that stuff gets in and we get that tank back, this thing should be getting somewhat wrapped up and at least driven to see what we need to do with the shocks and see what needs to be fixed on it. My dad's pretty sure he has all 150 wires and hoses hooked up to the transmission. So now that he has that mostly in, on Sunday we'll slap that motor in, get everything hooked up, and hopefully have this thing running on Sunday. But knowing us, it probably won't happen because we'll get distracted on 3 other race cars. But hopefully we'll have this thing running on Sunday and getting ready to have SDG come down and get the shocks off and see what they want to do with those. The 10 car just needs some plexiglass windows in there. And then I have pictures of it already, and we're going to list it for sale, see if anybody will bite on it. So that thing should... Well, hopefully we sell that fairly quick and it gets out of here so we can bring other stuff in, like my grandpa's pre-runner. The air compressor is going off in the background, but once we get the motor and transmission back from Mike Meehan, the 1600 can go together. And this thing don't need too much work, really. It's all, this whole rear end is brand new and all prepped, and then the front end we already did a little prep on, so there ain't much that needs to happen with it. And actually, we don't even need that transmission because we're probably going to throw in our short course transmission, which is down there. But once that motor's back, this thing can go back together. And that can happen all in a Sunday. So hopefully we get that motor back soon and we can go run it and make sure everything's good with this thing too. The Pro R, we just got all the clutches and pieces we broke at the Moore race, the last race we raced in this. So all those are here and ready to be put on. We just got them today. And then hopefully Pop's going tomorrow to pick up that front diff from Fortin. And maybe Sunday this thing can run, as long as my dad gets the rear shocks for that, rebuilt and revalved. Then we can go run that thing on Sunday because Pop could throw that together in maybe 2 or 3 hours. All right, the last car that we need to go over is Harpo's Raider. So the last part we're waiting on is studs so that we can throw all the new hubs on it. And then we got the front A-arm driver upper A-arm fixed so that can go back on. And once we get those studs in, this thing shouldn't take too long. And once again, this needs shocks done. So if my dad hopefully gets those done tomorrow for both cars, then this thing go back together once we get those studs in. So basically what I'm trying to say is we need a lot of parts. This is waiting on parts from Polaris. That's waiting on a part from Fortin. That's waiting on a motor from Mike Meehan. That's waiting on a part from Polaris. And then 10 cars waiting on a part. Well, that's just from Home Depot, but Pop's got to go get it and cut it out to the right size. But it's nighttime, and that means it's time to go in. I'll see you guys on Sunday.